January 2nd, 2024. This is the S&P 500 E-futures mini on the 2000 tick chart using the NinjaTrader 8 platform. There was no real economic data today that would cause the market to move any which way. It looked like it was a huge sell-off in the morning, and then it kind of just ranged between about, I would say, 47.97 to about, well, if you took it all the way over to here, 47.65. So 97 to 65 is about 32 points, but most of the time it stayed roughly about here. There wasn't too many setups that I could see. This is the beginning of a new year, the very first trading day of the year. So I would imagine that trading might be a little slow and gradually pick up because I believe probably for the rest of this week, it might be a little slower with things gradually increasing as people come back from vacation. I didn't see too many setups. I only took a total of one trade right here. And this one trade, I reviewed it in hindsight, and I think it was better to have just skipped it because it wasn't really the best setup. I believe it was a FOMO from this other pretty great setup right here. It was a second entry long, failed second entry short, and a triple test all in this one setup. And I'll get to it later, but it just kind of, this all set up and I wasn't sure about it, so I skipped it, and it had this really fantastic move. So I think there was a little bit of FOMO there, and then I just kind of probably saw something more deeply than was actually there and took this trade. I was fortunate that I was green on it, but in hindsight, I think this could have easily just been a no trade day. So I'm going to get into the trades right now. So in the pre-market, this is the high, and it sells off. And I just want to mention that the week between Christmas and New Year's, there was very slow. I didn't create any videos because I barely traded, really didn't look at the charts all that much. I did look at it after the fact in the evenings when I had time, and sometimes I missed a day and I just go back and look at it just to practice my chart reading. But I do know that it was very extremely slow price action from Christmas to New Year's. So if you guys took it off, it's probably, you didn't really miss much. It's better probably not to have sit through some of those stretches of time. I noticed how many candles were printing and how long it took for each candle to close. That would have been incredibly frustrating, I would imagine, to just sit there and just watch paint dry. So if you traded it, good for you. I'm going to go into today's setup right now. So it was a new high, excuse me. This is the pre-market, sold off, and it kind of consolidated right here. So right here, I was wondering if there's going to be one leg down, a consolidation, and a second leg down. Now here, prices are just so congested because this is actually about, about 7 points, but it was very tightly consolidating. So I was thinking there was some kind of range here. On the market open, it starts moving, but I don't see any clean setups that I felt comfortable with. It kind of creates this top here, and that's where I thought, this is probably the official range because it looked like it had some trouble busting through. Had another attempt here, and that's when I thought, okay, this is probably a range. It might come back to the bottom. When it comes back to the bottom, depending how the setup looks, it might be a long possibility. When it starts breaking down, it comes all the way down. There's a second entry long here because we took this as a, well, technically you take it from here as a new high, first entry long, second entry long, and I thought the count reset here, so it'd be a first entry long, second entry long, but there's no good signal bar here, so there's no trade. Prices then continue moving. I wasn't sure that there was this yellow channel at the time. I was drawing these smaller channels, and this yellow channel just kind of what I ended up with after much more price action evolved. But here it's just really tight, congested, so I didn't feel comfortable looking for, well, I didn't feel confident in any of the setups that I saw that could actually be high probability. You do have a new high here, first entry long, second entry long. This is a terrible signal bar. This is bouncing potentially off the bottom of this trend line support, but you don't really know if this could just keep pushing further down yet because it just looks a little bit messy. It moves up, it hits this, so that's where I kind of established that this is probably the trading channel, trend channel. Moves down, and this is actually where I saw the setup, but I didn't take it because I didn't trust it at the time. So this is what you see in real time. Saw a new high. It's a first entry long, pull back. This is about to set up a second entry long. But here, you notice there's a triple test because I noticed it. I also saw this as a new low. So it's a first entry short, pull back, second entry short. So right now, your second entry short hasn't failed and your second entry long hasn't triggered yet. So the only thing you have going for you right now is a triple test. Plus the second entry long, the signal bar isn't, if it was like close at the top, I think it would have had an order ready because then the failed second entry short looks more likely to happen. So what I did was I sat, I waited. So then this candle prints. So now everything's set up. You have a triple test, you have failed second entry short, and a second entry long. So I saw this, and all this was happening. It was a strong move above the EMA, and I just wasn't really sure if this was going to be a possible resistance because I think I was giving too much respect to this yellow down channel that I was thinking maybe it's going to hit this resistance and come down. So while the life of this candle was printing, it pushed up and also pushed above the EMA. But I was thinking, could this possibly be a break and it come back and test? So in hindsight, I realized this is actually probably a pretty decent setup to attempt it because the next resistance you would think it may be up here, but I left it alone and then the trade just kind of goes without me. So I thought at the time I was questioning and over questioning it. I think this is just something worth taking. Plus this candle here is only a 6 tick risk. So it's less than 2 points. So this plus the one entry above, one entry below would have just been an 8 tick risk, 2 points. This is probably a very likely trade to have taken a risk on, but unfortunately I overthought it, second guessed it, didn't quite trust it. The trade went without me, and that's okay. At least I thought it was okay until I get to my first setup. So it's a new high. It's the first trade. New high, first entry long, second entry long. It's a terrible signal bar, so I didn't trust it. Just left it alone. Presses in, continue. You could say this is a new high here. It's the first entry long, second entry long. But the thing I didn't like about counting this as a new high is this is still, depending on how you did the count, it'd be a first entry long, second entry long. So technically you do the recount here. To suddenly say this is my new high, I'm going to count it from here. It kind of conflicts with the rules of price action. So it's just kind of like, even though you see a second entry, you can't overlap them just to make what you want to happen. You can't you can't want a trade to happen and then start making the chart fit your narrative. And I think that's what was happening here. But this is where I kind of took my first trade, and it was admittedly riskier. So I saw this as a new low. It's a first entry short, second entry short. But I also saw this first entry, second entry. This is potentially creating a higher low because I was thinking this second entry short here, confirmed. It failed here with a strong push up. It pushed up again, but it closed and it failed, and it just ticked one tick below, bounced around and closed here. So I got it into my head that this is obviously going to push up higher. So I took this entry, and again, in hindsight, this should have been skipped because this isn't a good enough setup. I was very fortunate that it failed me. I was able to exit. It's very risky. And then as you can see, if I held for, more than 1 point, or if by chance this trade, because there's no high probability here, this trade is more likely to fail than work out, I would have just gotten stopped out. So this is a stupid, kind of riskier trade I totally should have skipped, but I think it was a little bit anxious because it's the first day of the year and I haven't traded for a while. So I was thinking, okay, obviously, I missed this trade here. I was just hunting, looking for any reason to take a trade, and that's what I found. I just found any reason, not a good reason, just any reason, and I was rewarded. But that was a bad trade to do. So I did have this in my notes to be very careful of things like that. So anyways, prices move down. It breaks out of this green channel, kind of chops around. It kind of gives validity that this might be some kind of localized support. So I had one test, two tests, three tests, a triple test, and now it's kind of respecting it again here. So I'm thinking my overall trading range could be up here and down here. So I was just kind of keeping that in mind in case it ever came back down here, I might have a trade ready. So then prices continue moving. You have first entry short. You also have first entry long, second entry long, but then it just gets very choppy here, very congested. I didn't like that. I just sat on my hands and made a measured move up, 2 legs up, and it created a new low, first entry short, second entry short. Now the second entry short is a failure. The EMA is holding, and it's after the confirmed failure of the second entry short, which is this big candle here, because here you don't really have a confirmed failure yet. You have a suspicion that it could fail. Here it clearly fails, but if I were to enter here, one tick above, there's not enough room to scalp out. And also I didn't want to put my entry way down here because that would mean that the next candle I'd want it to open, wherever it opened, pick me up and then continue back on its way after it just made this very strong push down. When you're seeing this in real time, you don't really have any idea that it's either going to push all the way back up to here or it might continue breaking down. At least I didn't, so I had to leave it alone. And as you can see, if I did put my entries just say one tick here or at the same high, I probably would have gotten filled here. sit through this anguish and very likely got stopped out, depending if I kept my stop down here or if I kept it here. And then it would have flashed back up. And if I did keep my cool, probably would have gotten a profitable trade. But as I said, this reading this is my skill level wasn't good enough to interpret this. So I think that I did the best thing, which was realize there might be a possible trade here, but I didn't have confidence in it, so I didn't risk any capital trying to take a hopeful trade. Then prices continue moving up. It looks like it falls into this green channel. It's consolidating. I don't see anything I particularly like. It was just very tight trading. Here I do see a failed second entry short. So it's after the break of this green channel. You have a new low. It's a first entry short, second entry short. Here, this isn't a good signal bar to tell you to go short. Here it fails, but then this is really nothing going on here. It's just very tight consolidation. You could claim that it might come back and test the high, but as you can see, it kind of hit the high and then it kind of ranged right here. So it wasn't a clean break out of this green channel. There's a break out of this green channel if this green channel is valid. It made one attempt up. It could be making a second attempt up, but it is just moving horizontal. So you don't really know if it's going to consolidate, continue up, or lose strength and continue down. So I just didn't really like what I saw. I just left it alone. Then it moves up, kind of comes back down. You have first entry long. Here you get a second entry long, but nothing here would have told you to get ready for a trade, at least for me. Then it keeps chopping. You have first entry short, second entry short. It's above the EMA. This isn't a very good signal bar. There's a failure on the second entry short here, but it flashes up and it closed kind of at the middle. So this is not very convincing to tell you to go long. Continues, it kind of falls into this trading range, and these candles are pretty big. I mean, they're not that big in context to what we've seen before, but they're just side by side. So just like they're moving from one end to the other. So I just had to sit on my hands. Prices then continue moving. It pushes down. It kind of tests the bottom of the pre-market, which is here, and the top of the pre-market's here. But it's testing the bottom of the pre-market. But again, I wasn't sure if this is actually the low or the trading range I should be paying more attention to. So I wasn't sure, so I had to really, really wait and be patient for a good, clean setup. You do have a new low here, first entry short, second entry short. There's a terrible signal bar. Nothing here tells me to go short. Plus, it's already pressing close to the bottom of this range. Continues moving, consolidates, and then it continues moving down on this green channel. You can see these are all side by side. There is no clean, confident entry that I could find. And then it gets pretty much into the last hour, starts breaking through it, and I do see a second entry short here. It's a good signal bar, but it's above the EMA, and prices are currently, they were having trouble breaking above the EMA. So this could be a trade to have taken, but it looked like it's a break of this green channel, made one attempt down, and then now it's about to make the second attempt down. But the second attempt, I don't know if, it was actually going to push back down. Well, I don't know. I couldn't quite tell what was going to happen, or I didn't have a good hunch. I would have wanted this candle to close below to give me a little more confidence that the EMA isn't going to be an issue, because there was still enough room to get to the bottom. But I wasn't sure, so I had to leave it alone. And then prices continue moving. Looks like if I did take the trade, it would have been here, and I would have gotten out at roughly right here. So it would have been enough for a scalp, but I think that would have been a gamble trade, similar to the actual trade that I did take over here. So knowing that, and also sitting through all this, I was just realizing that today I was lucky to get this trade and probably just sit on my hands and be grateful for the green trade on a mediocre setup. And so I just kind of left it alone. When prices continue moving, it kind of goes up this gradual shallow yellow channel, and then it kind of twists upwards. But here, it's going into the last 10 minutes and it just gets super volatile, and then it kind of moves into the close. So overall, there was more movement, as far as I could tell, compared to the last week, but it didn't necessarily yield very many or very good setups. So in hindsight, I think this should have been a no trade day. The fact that I did take a trade and I got profitable, I think it was just an artifact of me being super lucky. So hopefully that was helpful.